We used outboards. The boat had a diesel originally. We found out that we couldn't break any world records with a diesel because many small diesel boats had done the crossing. So with Andy's help, Andy Diermeyer, he walked into my shop 52 years ago with a Navy uniform on. He said, "I'm a mechanic." So for 52 years, Andy and his family have run the shop. He owns the shop himself now. And he helped me rig outboards. We did the Everett thing because we were the new dealers all our lives. And they decided 265-horse inline three cylinders, setting at 3,000 RPM would burn 2 gallons an hour, and the boat could do 6 knots in calm water. We ran one engine at a time, which you can see there. The second engine wouldn't double the speed, but it would double the fuel consumption, so it was much better with one engine. We had a little 99. One of the problems we had is, what was the amperage output on those alternators? 10? 65s. 9 amps on the charging with an autopilot, radar, SRC, no electronics, wouldn't keep the batteries up. So we had 4 heavy-duty batteries, and they dropped below 11 volts, and then none of the electronics would work. So Andy should have put bigger alternators on there. It's a little late.
I don't want to get a sweat.
We had another thing that he helped me with originally we bought these big inflatable tanks that you can buy when you want to go long trips. But we found that the sloshing around was too much in a small boat. So we had 18 or 20 groverbuilt tanks in stock. We just put them all in buildings wherever they fit. And I'm trying to figure how we're going to vent these tanks. The boat's going to be underwater half the time. And even if we run the vents in the top of the cabin, we're going to get water in the fuel. So if you've ever used the outboard motor auxiliary tank that has no vent on it, where the cap is airtight, when you plug it in, you see a little pin in that little adapter, and that lets air in the tank. So we sealed all tanks with no vent whatsoever. Ran about 24 gas lines into the pilot house, each one lettered with which side tank it's going to pull out of. And by not having a fuel vent in there, we managed to keep water out of the tanks. But you had to trim the boat. If you took too much out of the bow, you had to take some out of the port stop, had to trim it. When we got to the exhaust, we were under 100 gallons left because you couldn't run a straight line. When it blew, most of this drop to the south was because we couldn't hold a course. And either you shut down and drift, or you waste a lot of fuel trying to fight your way back against the wind. So the reason we thought we'd go to Ireland, but we ended up in the Azores, which is a longer trip, but it's the way the wind pushed us. Now, I can tell you where we started as far as my history. The guy sitting up on top is Dutch White. I was a kid, 10 years old, when he took me out fishing. And I worked with those fellas most of my life, and they were all very skiffs. Now, they were built like the Jersey skiffs. The Jersey beach boats originally fished off the beaches. They landed in the surf every night. There were no inlets, and they didn't have any engines, so they moved the boats to where there was a fishing ground, launched them in the surf, fished all day, and landed back on the beach. The Verity is an adaptation of that boat. The bottom was flat and could land on a beach on rollers, and they pulled them out with horse and wagons every night. Had to turn the boat around, launch it in the morning. As the boats got bigger and they got engines in them, they began going out from inlets, like Zach's Inlet was the first inlet that these boats worked out of, and it was Seaford, their hometown. That was settled in 1640. Some of the things Verity had that none of the others had, they had a dagger board. You notice this little model, Freddie Scalpinich from Freeport Point Shipyard made these for me. And what you did, the boats, as you know, anybody that runs a Verity or a groverbuilt, you never see them back in the slip. They're always bow in. This guy says he can back them in. It's really a trick. They slide sideways. It's a single screw. If there's wind, it's really tough to get them to go anything but downwind.
But when you were hauling set lines in the winter, you had to keep the bow from falling off. So to drop this in the cabin, there was a pinhole in each level of the stagger board. You drop the board down, usually all the way, set your steadying sail, and the boat could actually just point into the wind and almost stay by itself. That's the only one I've known in a powerboat like this that has this stagger board. One of the other features they developed is these cabins were removable. These boats fish codfish all winter, and they had a pot-belly stove. There's a stove pipe. The worst day I had offshore was 18 degrees off Fire Island, where everything was iced up, and the only way you could see, each pilot house just had one small ventilating section, and you could just crack that, you could see enough to get home. You always had a bag of coal and some kindling, and that pot-belly stove kept a lot of guys alive. When the springtime came, the codfish, usually around Easter, we'd start mackerel fishing. The guys that were young and brave would take their boats to Virginia, and they'd go to Chicotee, because that's where the mackerel would begin coming up the coast. They had to have nets that fished at night. You couldn't have, there was no plastic nets, so you couldn't fish a heavy net in the daytime. The fish would be spooked. So they laid offshore all night, and I've seen them come in with 4,000 pounds of mackerel in boat this size. And once they worked up the coast of Jersey and Long Island, gill netting mackerel, by the time they left, it was time to get lobster pots ready. Then these cabins were removed. We have an open boat here, right? Yeah. Once the cabins were removed, because then it all lobster pots. By the way, every boat had a tiller. You notice this? They never had a steering wheel, because you can run a boat with a tiller, hard over, back and forth, with a second, not steering with a wheel, you got to get up and spin it all the time. So coming in the inlet or tending your lines, it was so easy to just have a tiller handle. So in order to put 30 or 40 lobster pots in the stern and haul the pots over the bow, they had to get rid of the cabin. So the boat was fished completely open all summer. The lobster pots were hauled in a davit forward, and we ran 30, 35 pots on a string, fishing as far as the collar banks. Then in the fall, again, the cabins go back on cod fishing. We all got our own bait. Nobody would buy bait. You never paid dock space for the boat. You never paid for a haul out. You went on the beach, and the tide did the haul out. And we would have to tong our own skimmers if it was calm in the ocean. With a northerly in the winter, you could usually stop and tong 3 or 4 bushels of bait to bait your lines. And if you were really rich, you bought a dredge, and you could haul a little 8-inch dredge and get 3 or 4 bushels in 15 minutes. Then you'd open the clams, stay up half the night, bait your lines, and you got to get out before dawn, because codfish feed in a sort of a feeding frenzy when the sun comes up. So if you didn't get your lines out before dawn, you didn't do the same numbers. Picking up lines, everybody said, how could you like codfish and they don't bite? They're so lazy. There's nothing like taking in lines and feeling that line start to come alive. And then you look down, the water is clear, and they're hanging there like white socks on the line. 1, 2, 3. And as you get them up, here's a big guy, and he's just lip. He's just in the lip. If you sneeze, you're going to lose him, you know. You get him up, had a little short gaff, and just keep throwing him. Never took time to unhook him. You'd snap him. You either break the hook, rip the mouth open. But first thing you know, you're knee-deep in fish. And that's really a lot of fun. We get 5,000 pounds, I've seen, as a record in one day. This is in the 30s of World War II. World War II came along, you see these boats with big numbers. You had 12-inch numbers on the boats. On the cabin top, you had a big, low, orange with 12-inch numbers issued by the Coast Guard, so that aircraft could identify you. No one could out the inlet during the war if you weren't a citizen. Once they found the German subs were being fed from Long Island, no one got out. That means all the guys that owned drags in Freeport